I want to thank our sponsor, The Dance Studio. Brandon Halleck and his incredible studio is such a gift to our community. I can't express the joy and fun I had when I was getting my lessons with him, learning everything from the tango to the cha-cha. It is so much fun. It's such a great way to just work out, get your energy out, and frankly, it's good for your mind. And I tell you, we've also had our family get together there and celebrate birthdays. And it's just a wonderful gift to our community that we have this ballroom dance studio. So give him a call and tell him Pinpoint sent you. Welcome to Pinpoint. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode today, where we are going to discuss a very important subject. The subject that has affected so many of us, either personally, directly, indirectly, and that would be anxiety. Anxiety comes in so many different forms, and it's a lot to unpack, but we just want to do our best to bring it to light and talk about, what does God say? What does the Bible say? How do we as Christians, deal with this? And I'm so honored that the person I get to discuss this with is not only just a wonderful friend, but she is so knowledgeable. She's none other than Dr. Jovi Sanders. Jovi is a faithful pastor's wife. Jovi leads ministry in our women's ministry and youth ministry at her church. She has also got her master's and doctorate in organizational leadership. She's got an emphasis in Christian ministry, and she helps clergy really know how to pastor their flock, really, their congregation, and help guide and lead them and kind of marry and the gap between, the spiritual support and mental wellness. Jovi also is co-host of her own podcast, Real Talk, where she and her co-host talk about mental wellness and Christianity in everyday life. They have real honest conversations where they bring hope to the people that are listening. So we are just so honored that we have Jovi here with us today, and she's going to help us have this very, very important conversation. Welcome, Jovi.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to try my best to help.
Well,
either that or we're all getting lost in the forest.
Hey, listen, I have no doubt that you're going to bring a lot of wisdom to this conversation. And so there are so many facets of anxiety, and it can go from, how do we know it's stress, or if it's a panic attack? There are just so many tentacles. I just don't know where to start. So I think I just best will start with you as a pastor. When you have someone come to you and just ask, I'm anxious, what do I do? Or I'm feeling anxiety, or I'm struggling with this. What's the springboard? Where do you kick off?
So I think the big question to have at the forefront as we move forward is realizing that anxiety shows up differently in everybody, because anxiety is tied into emotions, and emotions are tied into feelings. So what may trigger anxiety for me may not trigger anxiety for you. So as an example, yesterday we had church, and I asked the kids, I said, when you hear the word risk, just that word risk, R-I-S-K, what do you feel? What do you think? Where does that take you? And the kids started answering, making decisions, unknown spaces, change. That was immediate for them. For me, when I hear the word risk, I hear adventure, new trails. What can we find out? How is this going to turn out? There is no risk in my world is not associated with bad.
Right.
Risk in my world is associated with growth. Charting unknown territories. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Grab the map, circle. What have we never done before? That's how I see it, but it's because that's how I was raised. So to me, when I have someone come up to me and say I'm feeling anxious, I have to remove myself from what I interpret to be anxiety.
Right.
What causes anxiety in me is not going to be the same thing that causes anxiety in them. So before I start to immediately put a solution into that, I have to create space to actively listen to what it is that they believe has caused them anxiety, and then take it from there.
I think that's so powerful, because as someone that wants to help and wants to fix, it would be so easy to just go straight into, this is what you should do, or have you prayed, or what does the word say, and go straight into solution mode versus, wait, let's back out. Let's broaden the lens, and let's talk about, what is the root, and why are you feeling this? Where are you going in your mind with this? Is this just a feeling, or is this something you're just is this a thought pattern? Because we know our heart and our feelings aren't necessarily reality.
Right. And that's such a huge point because I think one of the things that people they may not know, it's not even so much an issue of do they forget, they may not know all of the intricacies that are happening in the brain. By the time you get to the anxious point, your brain's already taken off, your body's already responded, the mind, the thought process, it's already curated. What's the worst case scenario that can happen? You've already gone into the alligator death roll in the swamp and there's
Mhm.
nobody there and now I'm drowning and my body will never be found. Like you've
Yeah,
already jumped into
truly.
CSI episode number 19
Yeah.
on, the ID network. So it's an issue of having to slow down and figuring out you're in an anxious state now, but I need to know what triggered that. Do you know what triggered that? Because anxiety is the result of the mind has already taken off, the limbic system has already responded, the 911 call has already been sent to the body. So the body has alerted and it's running now because adrenaline, the bear is already chasing me.
Right.
So I'm already taken off the road. When you turn around, if you have enough time to stop and turn around, you'll realize that it was a shadow that looked like a bear and there is no threat. But your brain interpreted it as a threat because of your history. So
Mm.
your history said, take off running because the last time you were in a situation like this, it was dangerous. So run. So a lot of times people come up and they're having anxious thoughts. And when you start to break it down, if they have enough time to take a breath and break it down, they realize that the threat really wasn't a threat. It was an imagined threat. It was a perceived threat, but there was no threat. So the first thing is there a threat? Let's identify,
Right.
is there a threat? And if there is no threat, then why did you respond like there was?
So the trigger, what's the
Trigger.
trigger? So that makes
Correct.
me think where I've heard stories, and I will say for myself, years ago, I had panic attacks. I wouldn't have thought of it more as anxiety, but panic. And I remember even being pregnant at one point and having such panic, and maybe it was anxiety. I really don't know. In that time, this was almost 30 years ago, the doctor said, just take Benadryl, take it by the buckets. And I'm thinking now that was really bad advice, and because for a lot of reasons, but I did. And so I was like panicked to go to the grocery store, like something was happening and I didn't understand even why. So I feel like so many of us are experiencing whether it's panic or anxiety. We really don't even know why. Like, where
Right.
did this come from? You know?
And I think for individuals, it is important to realize that the way we see the world and the way that we process information, a lot of that is taught. So it's either coming
Mm,
through the immediate, this is how we do it here in our home, this is what we do, or as a result of. So one of the
yeah.
things that I talked to the kids yesterday is if you're raised by an anxious parent or an anxious caregiver and you don't know how that caregiver is showing up after a long day of work. All you know is you don't know what caregiver personality is showing up when it's the same person, but the mood can fluctuate from extremely friendly or super playful or angry or very secluded or depressed or
Mm,
anxious. I don't know how, when that door opens up and that person comes in, I don't know how they're going to walk in. So, as the person on the receiving end, I have to prep myself for all 19 personalities to come through and then be ready to figure out what personality showed up and then respond to that personality. That in and of itself is going to create anxiousness in me because I don't
yeah.
know what's getting ready to. My day has been normal until 3:47, which is when that caregiver gets home. And then it's chaos and I
Hmm.
don't know what that's like. That programs the brain to an anxious, you're kind of always in a floating anxious state because I don't know what's happening. So I'm like
Well, you don't feel
you
safe.
don't feel safe. And
Right.
so the brain is constantly in that survival mode of you're going to do whatever you have to do to create a safe environment for you. Well, you keep that up as a child and then through your teens and then through your young adult,
Mm.
and that creates anxious adults. And so now when someone knocks on the door, I'm immediately triggered because I have no idea what's on the other side of that door, not being able to make the connection that that's how I was raised. So many times if I ask someone, what
That's
do you
such a
think the
one.
trigger is? It's such a commonplace thing that they can't pinpoint it because who would think that a knock on the door would set me off. And so when I ask the question, going back to that question, the
Right.
example that I gave the kids, when you hear the word risk, what do you hear? They immediately go back to, in my life, this is what risk represents. I didn't follow orders, so I got grounded, I got spanked, whatever. I was asked to do this, and I thought I would have enough time to play the game and wash the dishes, but I didn't. I took the risk. Let me
Yeah.
play the game and not wash the dishes. And then there was a repercussion for me not washing the dishes. In some homes, people get beat for that.
Mm.
In some homes, people just get grounded. In some homes, I lose the game. So what's the consequence? And so one of the kids talked about, he said, I'm an overthinker, because I get stuck now in that loop of, if I do this and it yields this, what can this be? If I do this and it yields this. And for him, what happens is it shuts him down, and he gets so stuck in overthinking that he can't even make a decision. I can't make a decision. Now I don't know what to do because I'm freaked out. Any way I go, there's no good solution here for me. If he doesn't handle that right now, he'll end up, I know I'm probably jumping in a different category, but now we have wives that come into our office and say, I'm absolutely fed up with my husband because he won't make a decision. So now I have to be the man of the home. I have to be the priest of the home. I have to run the home because my husband cannot make a decision to save his life.
Right.
And you're really looking at a 9-year-old that never developed past, no matter what decision I make, it's wrong. Because there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And that little kid has shown up now in the body of a 35-year-old man who married as an adult but still thinks like that 9-year-old that can't make a decision. So now we've got it. There's a lot going on there.
Absolutely.
But how do you balance that? And does that 35-year-old man know that it's the 9-year-old that's showing up in the body of a 35-year-old?
Well, truly. And to your point, whether it's that 35-year-old man or 60-year-old woman or fill in the blank person, that the fact that you brought up overthinking, I think that's so powerful, and that touches, because I tend to do that. I have had those patterns that I've almost had to deconstruct for myself because I have gotten stuck. And it could be, my kids would even tell you. A couple of them, I think, struggle a little bit with overthinking too. And we have these conversations because it's like, make a decision. And it could be as simple as, do I want Mexican food for dinner or do I want, a salad? It's always going to be Mexican food. Let me just answer that question most likely. But seriously, it's just, sometimes it's like, well, do I want to pull the trigger on booking a flight to go on this vacation? Do I want to go on a Monday or should I go on Tuesday? Well, if I go on Monday, this could happen. If I go on Tuesday, this could happen. And it's like you get so wound up in the if-thens that it's like, where does that come from? And so it almost sounds like you have to walk all that back as you're deconstructing your thought patterns, which could be rooted in either a trauma response or just, even if it wasn't trauma, it's just a response to your circumstances that you couldn't control as a child.
Imagine being raised by a parent or a caregiver. I'm going to say caregiver because really in our world now, aunts, great aunts, grandmothers, sisters,
Daycare,
uncles, they're all
whatever, yeah.
raising kids because parents have fallen off the map. So I'm going to use the word caregiver. So really, when I say the word caregiver, it applies to anybody that's raising a dependent.
Right.
So I'm being raised by this caregiver that nothing that I do is ever good enough. So you asked me to wash the dishes and I washed the dishes, but I didn't use hot water. I used cold water. So even though the task was completed, you're going to investigate. Well, how did you wash the dishes? Well, I used water. What kind of water did you use? Well, I used hot water, or I used cold water. Well, you should have known better. You should have used hot water. Boom, hit to the self-esteem. I was all excited. I brought you kind of like the cat that catches the mouse and brings you the mouse.
Yeah.
And you're like, look at what I did.
Yeah.
So now I'm looking at this and I was like, okay, next time I'm going to use hot water. I'm going to remember that. The brain catalogs it and puts it, okay, lesson learned. So the next time around, I'm like, okay, now I use hot water, and they come in and they're like, well, there's 2 soaps on the sink, dishwashing soaps. Which one did you use? Well, I used the yellow one. Well, you should have known to use the green one because the green one is a grease cutter. So now I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so now I got to remember not cold water, but hot water, and not yellow, but green. So catalog that, okay, because I have become so obsessed with pleasing you because I just want to please you because in my world, pleasing, when you're finally pleased with me, that's when you extend the arm and you pat me around the back. And I just really, what I want is a hug.
Yeah.
I just want you to touch me and say, I love you. But I'm not going to get the I love you until all of these things are done perfectly. Well, when you're living with someone that you cannot please, you will spend your whole life, because yesterday was the hot water, today it's not the right soap, tomorrow it's you didn't put the dishes in front of the bowls. Anybody knows when you do the dishes, you put the bowls here and the dish and the plates go here and the dinner plates go here and the
So does that
saucers.
still apply to how I like to still load the dishwasher and I go behind my husband and he does it this way? And it's like every day that you put the coffee pot here, Do you not see that I move it over here?
Yeah,
So sorry to all my children and family.
and I will tell you that
Yeah.
as my mom, who I adored, I loved my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom's passed now, but I loved my mom. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm getting ready to say is not a dig at my mother,
Yeah.
but I used to call my mother the queen of butt
Mhm.
because I could literally hand my mom $1 million, and she would say, "Thank you, but." Why did you give it to me in $100 bills? Girl,
Right.
I just handed you $1 million. Does
Yeah.
it matter in what
Yeah.
denomination the bills are? That was how my mom was wired. So in the home that I was raised in, I always felt inadequate. There was always like, even as an adult, will struggle sometimes with not being good enough because in the back of my mind, I did all of these things and my mom could figure out a way to critique it. And in her world, and this is what she would tell me, she believed this until the day she died. She believed that feedback was important because you'll never get better without the feedback. So her idea of how she was raised was if I don't give you feedback to correct this behavior, then you're not going to get any better at the behavior. And I want you to be the best that you can be. So her intention was a genuine intention of, I want my daughter to be the best that she can be. But for the daughter on the receiving end of the critiquing, it
Mhm.
was, but all I wanted you to be was happy.
Right.
And instead what I got was, well, I wish you would have done this, that, or the other. In her older years, she modified that a little bit, but until the end, that's just how she was wired. Fast forward, I marry a husband who is really at the core a perfectionist. So in our marriage, when we struggled the first years of our marriage, it was because I would fold a blanket and he would come in behind me and refold the blanket it's a flippin' blanket.
Yeah.
Does it matter how it's folded? So that struck to the insecurities in me, which is why we ended up in counseling, because I thought it doesn't
that's
matter
real,
what I do.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm saying to you, stop moving the flippin' coffee pot. Just leave it.
Yeah, I know.
Just
I'm
leave it.
over here going,
Leave
okay,
it.
note to self, stop moving the coffee pot.
Leave it where it's at.
When Kurt folds the towels, don't go back and refold them. Like, sorry, I'm apparently I need this conversation.
Because here's
Because
why.
but I'm aware though, honestly, Jovi, that I do have the awareness at this point that when the towel is hanging on the rack off the dishwasher and it's askew, I used to be like, oh, I've got to go fix that. I don't have to quite so I can look at it and go, it'll be okay. Like
Right.
I'm aware of that in myself. So in this conversation that we're having, I'm thinking, I'm sorry to my children for all the inadequacies if I ever put that on you, but they do know because we have had these conversations that, like your mom, I think I was a lot like that, but I didn't have the intention of not making them feel great about when they did the laundry or put the dishes away. It was more, or even tuck in your shirt or take your hat off at the table, or, you should carry your purse or whatever applied. But it's hard because it's like, how do you navigate from teaching to hurting their self-esteem? And I'm sure they're having to deal with some of that still today, like we all do.
And I want to give this history lesson as far as my mom is concerned, because I think in context it helps understand how that mindset not only weaved itself into the psyche of who she was, but how it stayed. When my mom passed, she was 82, and how that behavioral pattern remained with her even after both my brother and I were like, Mom, chill out.
Yeah.
That towel askew on the dish holder thing is still going to dry my hands, whether it's perpendicular to the
Yeah.
bar at a 90-degree angle or if it falls on the floor. If I pick it up, it's still going to dry my hand. The task is still being done.
Right.
It's just how it's being presented.
Right.
So my mom was from Panama. And when she was a young girl, a family took her from the home with her immediate family, with my grandmother and her siblings and her dad. And she was removed from that home and placed in another home with the promise of, we're going to make sure she goes to school. She lived in a very rural part of Panama, and the family that, quote unquote, adopted her was living in the city. And the promise was she's going to go to a better school. She's going to be able to get better studying. And my grandmother had a slew of children. And so back in those years, it was like, okay, if you can help us, that would be great. And unfortunately, the transition was we're really bringing her in and making her a maid and making her kind of like almost slave mentality and labor. And so my mom had to work for everything. So the lady that really raised my mother and was an integral part of her formative years was the perfectionist.
Mm.
So for my mom to be successful, everything had to be right.
So it's generational.
So it was generational. It was learned. And
Yeah.
so in the home where she was raised, if she didn't do it right, she wasn't fed. If she didn't do it right, she had to sleep on the floor versus on a bed. So there was punishment associated with, if you cannot yield correct behavior, then we're going. So it was conditional. It was not unconditional. She didn't receive unconditional love. She received conditional love. That so traumatized her that she thought, for the protection of my children, no one will ever treat my children like that. So let me show you what I learned. But instead of it coming out as, baby, don't do it that way because XYZ, it's not good enough, fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not good enough, fix it was because I don't want you to suffer what I suffered.
Mm-hmm.
But my personality and the way that I process, and even with my brother, the way that he processes, we were raised by the same mother in the same home with the same rules, but we processed it through our personality of how we were wired completely different. My brother had his personality response, and I had my personality response, and we were being raised by the same mother. The rules were the same across the board, but we reacted to those rules differently. So one of the things that I would love to talk about, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, is emotional intelligence, which you said, I'm aware now that these are the things that I do. So emotional intelligence deals with knowing not just what you do and how you do it and what are your triggers and how do you respond to things, but now your children, because now you're raising little people, and having to identify within your children, what is their temperament, what is their attachment style, how do they process apologies, are they touching children, are they non-touching children, are they introverts, are they extroverts, knowing enough about yourself to recognize the individuality in your children and then not impose the same punishment, consequence, conversations on all three, because you got three different distinct individual children that require three different distinct individual moms. Same individual dispensing love and discipline in three completely different ways.
Well, Jovi, that's so powerful. And as you're saying that, what I'm taking in is, okay, but now they're adults. So we'll use my children as an example. I'm sure they won't mind.
Sure, I'm going to out you all right now.
I'm going to out all three of my children. I have permission from one.
So use the one. Use the one that has given you permission.
Well, the thing is they love me so much and they're so supportive of where I'm going in this. And we do have such an open relationship, but I'm not raising them anymore. They're already raised. So, I mean, that you guys they are. So at my age, I feel like that has happened and I can't go back and fix it. And at the time, we really don't have the training as parents to know what you're saying now is so important to know. I started to figure that out when my youngest two were in high school. My oldest, Dawson, he was already in college. And I'm thinking, gosh, I wish I could have done it better because I knew more. But I didn't know then what I didn't know. And I think you almost have to figure it out as you go so often, which is hard to do it right. But now the blessing is that as I'm an adult and they're adults, I mean, they're all in their 20s, that we can have these conversations. And, unfortunately, whether they've had anxiety or if I have had anxiety or, their friends have had it, this generation is experiencing what maybe our generation didn't even A, have, or B, know how to identify. It's sort of like pick yourself up by the bootstraps and march on. So that was sort of my mentality. And not to diminish what they were going through, but I did not have that privilege to even pay attention to that. So it's like the generation of how I was raised has carried over to my children and how I raised them. And now we are in this place where, okay, we are where we are. If we're having feelings of anxiety or panic, the tentacles could be stress or nervousness or wherever that goes. But the core of anxiety, of worry, we have to just, like you're saying, come into the rational, the emotional intelligence of why am I feeling it? What caused it? What do I do about it? I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Apple House. Tom and his staff at the Apple House in Terre Haute have just been amazing with helping my husband and I do all our landscape. This is where we go to get our seasonal pots, all our flowers for our garden, our front porch, all the things that make spring wonderful. To just experience their customer service is far and above. And I just thank you so much for your sponsorship, and you all just need to go to the Apple House and let them help you and tell them Pinpoint sent you.
Well, and I want to hit on something that you said, which is my children are raised. And I think that part of the disconnect in that statement is your son we'll throw an age out there, he may be 25. But that anxious little boy in him is part of the 25-year-old.
Exactly.
So many times when anxiety shows up, it's the 8-year-old. It's the 7-year-old that's showing up, but it's showing up in the body of a 25-year-old. Now, if anxiety, and again, strictly hypothetical, if anxiety was developed in him or in her or in whomever, because I know that if I make a bad decision or if I don't make the right decision, and not even so much a right or wrong decision, but a decision that pleases the caregiver in my life.
Or it could be a coach or a teacher.
Right,
it may not even necessarily be a parent.
And if the personality is people-pleasing, they have a gentle spirit and they just want to make sure everybody's happy. They're a hospitable person and they're
I
like,
have one of those.
Yeah, so it's like my job is to make sure that you're happy. Well,
all three are like that.
For you to be happy, I have to figure out what is it that you need and you want. So now in my brain, I'm really not even doing things that satisfy me. What satisfies me is satisfying you. Mm-hmm. So that's really the whole, at the end of the day, a people pleaser is happy when they've pleased the person they're wanting to please. That's what brings me joy, is what do you want? The imbalance there is if I give that all the time, then I'm never doing anything for myself. I'm always doing things for others. So now I'm just squeezing the sponge, and it's all going out. There's going to come a moment when I wake up and I'm depleted because I've never allowed anything to come in, because the way I'm wired is I have to please others. Yeah. Now, if in the home, my parents' joy, somehow I interpreted it to be my responsibility. If I don't do what you want and now you're sad because you tell me, look what you've done to me. I'm crying right now because you can't do anything right. That's what comes. Now somehow this 8-year-old child in their mind has assumed that the only way my parent is going to be satisfied is if I do everything right. And we know at our age that does not exist. Yeah. We don't do everything right. You're going to drop the ball at some point because we're human and that's what we do. But for the people-pleasing child, that in their mind becomes their number one thing, is how do I please my parent? How do I please my spouse? How do I please my boss? How do I please my coach? And the list just goes on and on. So their life joy is in making others happy. Well, and I know that I just said, well, what makes me happy is making you happy, but that's out of whack. Like at some point you should just eat ice cream because it just makes you smile. Yeah. And it shouldn't matter what everybody else thinks. Do you like pistachio ice cream? Then eat the pistachio ice cream without worrying about how does this make somebody else feel in that space.
That's such a real dynamic though.
Yeah. And it is.
Even with friends, it's like, well, what restaurant do you want to go to? Or what do you want to do tonight? Well, then one person's over there going, just make a decision. And someone else is like, but I just want you to be happy. And all this goes back to the root of there's this imbalance of emotion, and it can be triggered by your childhood, and it's manifesting in, I just feel this weight on my shoulders. Whether it's for the future, for the now, all of it.
And the emotional intelligence says to the where do you want to eat? Not deciding where you want to eat is the decision. I've decided not to decide. Mm-hmm. I've made that decision. So now if you are high on the emotional intelligence scale and you realize that that's how I'm wired, on a non-confrontational day, you're going to ask me, hey, what kind of food do you really like to eat? And that person's going to say, I love Chinese food. And you pocket that information. So the next time, don't put that person in the position to make the decision, because history tells you they're not going to make the decision. So what you say is, I'd love to have Chinese food today. Why? Because you already know that that's their favorite food. So that's what emotional intelligence is recognizing that they're unable to make the decision. So where does anxiety come in? So let's go back to the original question. Where does anxiety come in? For many, it's the not knowing how you're going to respond or what the situation is going to yield. So I almost get bottlenecked in that space of the hypothetical. What if so many different things could happen and I
Yes.
start to panic, and now I'm starting to just unravel because I don't know. And the emotional dysregulation is going to show up with the sweaty palms, the increased heart rate. I can't breathe, the panic attack, the world's going dizzy. Oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
Why? Because now the limbic system has sent out every 911 that it knows, because all of this for you is danger. Danger of not pleasing someone, danger of getting hit, danger of being beat, danger of losing everything, danger of being evicted, danger, 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 because that's what your trajectory brings you. To you, it might be something completely different. But my history says that when I make these core decisions, there is a huge, high possibility that this is what's going to be the outcome. And because I don't know what the outcome is, that has triggered panic in me, and the panic is showing up as anxiety.
Okay, so this is so helpful because as you're talking, of course, I'm thinking of my own self, my children, my experiences. I did have struggles with panic for a season in my life. I remember one when I was really young before my dad died. I might have been 8 or 9. So I remember those feelings sitting in a restaurant. But, my mom even took me to the doctor, like, why is my daughter having this? And then it went away for a season and it would come back. And as I look back, I can see the times it came back was when I felt unrest or unsettled within my circumstances, the unknown. So now tying it in biblically, how do we know that, okay, it's getting the tools, can I pray this, away and truly just surrender this whole burden? It can be adulting for our 20 somethings, your kids in their 20s and my children in their 20s. It's overwhelming from having to pay the bills, having to live on your own. It's different for them than it was for us. It just is. There's so
Right.
many things to talk about that alone. But also it's like, how do we know that this is something I really need counseling? I can go to my pastor. Well, maybe I need more than that. Like I might need a doctor, medication. I think there's so much messaging out there that also makes you feel like, well, you should just be able to handle it in prayer, or you should just be able to handle it. Just talk to, one of my girlfriends in ITs. Well, really, we just need to have a couple long conversations. Maybe it's 4, 5, 6 days straight of conversation and beating the subject to death. We'll be fine. And that's probably super unhealthy, and I'm exaggerating, but still, I feel like you've got different messaging on how to address as a Christian, as a follower. What do you do?
Well, for us, the first question that you asked me is, if somebody comes up to me and says, I'm anxious, and
Right,
I'm wearing the role of pastor. I've got my pastor hat on. It's
right,
different than if a friend, because I'm the friend that will beat up, who do we got to go beat up right now
right.
that is doing this to my BFF?
Yeah.
Because I will wait, get in the car, let's go. So there's a difference in what do you want my role to be? And to
Right.
you, I think you said somewhere in your conversation, you said, I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to want to fix. And I think the first thing that we want to remember is, if I come to someone, or if someone comes to me, that's what I'm asking them is, what is my role in the question that you're asking me? Are you wanting me to help you fix this? Are you simply just needing an ear for
Yeah.
me to
No,
listen
that's
to?
yeah,
What is
so
it?
important.
Because you have already determined what my role, you're coming to me asking me a question because in your head you've already determined what my role is,
Mhm.
except I didn't receive the memo. It was an
Yeah.
internal memo that you
Boy.
sent to yourself. So now I have to break into the office computer and be like, hey, what was my role when you
Yeah.
came to me? If all you're wanting to do is listen, then I'll provide a listening space. If you're wanting to have me come alongside you and help decipher what's going on, let's go
That's
down
so
that road.
important.
So first of all is figure out, what is my role in the person that's
Right.
coming to ask me, because we can go, like you said, what are we talking about? Do you need me to help you make an appointment because you realize this is bigger than both of us and I'm going to need a counselor? And do you have information on a counselor? Where are you at? Are we in the middle of the breakdown? Are we at the end of the meltdown, or at the beginning? I think I'm about to lose my mind. Where are we? So
Right.
establish that first. The second component is knowing as a leader, what am I equipped to do? Because within the first few minutes of the conversation, I'm going to be pretty quick to be like, yeah, this is way outside of my pay grade. I'm not equipped to deal with this. So I'm going to partner with you. I'm going to give you a space to vent right now to kind of bring the pressure down a little bit to where it's manageable. But the reality of it is, I'm going to love you too much to tell you that we can handle this today. This is going to
Right.
require extended conversations. Either I'm not trained, I don't have the time, this isn't the right place. I don't know if that's going to trigger something in me. If I am a sexual abuse survivor, and you're coming to me now with the fact that you just realize that your children are being sexually abused, and I think that may trigger something in me, I'm not moving down that road, because now there's two of us that are drowning in this ocean. So we know, I have to know, but that goes back to emotional intelligence,
Right.
knowing what can I handle, what can I not handle, and do you trust me enough to say, hey, let's forward this out. So first thing is figure out what your role is. The second is assess. We want to assess the situation and figure out what you're telling me, where are we at. The third thing is wanting to know from them. People often want a solution for the problem right now. Oh, but you want me to go back in time and figure out where that triggered? That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I just want you to fix this right now. Well,
Yeah.
I can help you fix this right now. But in 2 weeks, because we never address what triggers those things in you, you're going to be right back over here asking me now to fix another solution and another solution. And that's not what I am.
Yeah.
I'm not some ATM that you can come in and say, oh, today I need $20. Let me go pin in this number. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm enabling you to stay in an unhealthy state.
Right.
And that's not who I am. So my job is to get you healthy. Whether I get you healthy or somebody else gets you healthy, that's going to be what my role is. So if that's what you're wanting, then I'm going to have to respectfully say you're going to have to find somebody else for that play date, because it's not this girl.
Yeah.
So knowing what your boundaries are and knowing what you can and cannot do. At that point, when the person says, okay, let's address this for today, because this is a crisis situation. So let's talk this out. Let's bring in other parties if we need to, whatever that looks like. Then when the kind of the pressure has subsided, then I can kind of go back and say, okay, this is where we were, and we have found ourselves in this situation in the last 6 months. You have been here 11 times. That
Yes.
pattern is unhealthy.
Right.
So what are we going to do? Because there's something else going on. Then it's just happened to be John this week. It was Stacy 2 weeks ago. It was the babysitter 3 weeks ago. It was the mail carrier 5 weeks ago. But you're the common denominator in all of these scenarios. So
why?
we may need to be
Yeah.
looking at something a little bit different. So as far as what the word says, yeah, the word says cast all your cares on him. Don't be anxious for anything. We see Bible characters throughout the word that dealt with mental health issues. We know that those things surface and show up differently in everyone. Is God big enough to heal you? Absolutely. Is God big enough to walk you through it? Absolutely. But are you brave enough to take God on that journey? That's the question you need to be asking, because you might have to go backward and to fix some stuff back here so it doesn't continue to trip you up here. But are you willing to make that, or you just want to pretend it's not there?
Mm-hmm.
That's really, I think, at the end of it, when you look at anxiety, is voicing, I'm anxious. This is what I think is causing the anxiety. Let's deal with what we can now, whether it's through talk therapy, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through fasting, whether it's through reading the word, whatever we need to resolve this issue right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fix that. And then from that point forward, how do we move on so we don't find ourselves in the repetitive pattern of getting caught up in anxiety? Because anxiety is going to show up. Life is just what it is,
Well, it
and
is.
anxiety's there. It's how you respond to anxiety that really, I think, is the telling point. Do you need additional help here? Because you don't have the tools to overcome this speed bump.
Right.
Every time you hit it, it stops you dead in the tracks.
Right.
Speed bumps are designed to slow you down a little bit, so boop, you get to the other side. But for you, speed bumps just stop you. The car can't get over. So why? What's the problem here? Just gun it a little bit, and you might be able to get over it.
That's awesome.
So I think that's the best example that I can give as to how do you deal with anxiety when somebody shows up. What is it? Because anxiety is going to look different for me than it's going to look for you.
Well, it is. And I think about just, we're at a different age than our children, and we are dealing with it. If we have stress, it's going to manifest differently than if you're in your 20s. And just talking to my daughter, Ellie, the other day, we were talking about this very subject. So I told her that you and I were going to be talking about this. And we just really approached this generation. She's almost 26, and my other two children are in their 20s also. And they've all individually shared with me their age group has dealt with this anxiety conversation so much more than I feel like my friends and I rarely talked about. And that's not to shame a generation,
Right.
because I don't really feel like a lot of it is their fault, their circumstances of their life, the things coming at them. And my daughter, Ellie, said, I just don't think we were meant to live like this. And I said, I could not agree with you more. I feel like the stimulation coming in and your generation is receiving from really so much of social media and just the pressures. And I even saw a Barna survey that said something like 50+% of Gen Zs are anticipating the worst could happen. They already kind of think that. So they're already living in that
Yeah.
anxious space. So we could talk about this in 2 or 3 different episodes, but I feel like we have established that it's real and we don't want to minimize it in people, because I think there also can be a feeling attached to that. Like, I'm feeling anxious. Is that okay? Or am I going to be judged for this? Is it okay to talk about it? But you also don't want to be labeled by your coworkers or friends as, oh, they're sensitive, or, oh, they're anxious, or, it's such a very sensitive subject, but it shouldn't be.
And I want to say something. You said something in it. I had a thought. We are from the generation of, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just make one step at a time, one day at a time, we'll cross that bridge. This generation is, the bridge is there, will it collapse?
Yes,
And
it's
so
so true.
I don't even want to get on the bridge. Is there an alternate route to go? Because I
Yeah.
don't know if that bridge is safe, because 18 bridges have collapsed in the last 25 years. And so
Yes.
this is what the data says. So
Yeah.
I think there's been such a
I know too much.
saturation. Yes, saturation of information. And it, regardless, it's still hypothetical, because we cannot with 100% certainty say, this is the way that we're going to launch out. We've got a pretty good feeling that this is what's going to go. But even at the beginning of this podcast, we were like, okay, we have an idea of where we're going to go, but we really don't know where the conversation is going to go. If we scripted everything the way it was going to go, then are we living at that point? Or is it just the safe route and this is where we're going to stay? So going back to my identity of risk, for me, risk is something fun. It's something exciting. So I'm not looking at it, what's the hypothetical? The hypothetical is, I may come back with an amazing story, whether I fall and scrape my knee or whether I take the cliff dive. No matter how I spin that, at the end of the day, it's what I make it. So really, at the end of the day, it's on me. It's how do I decide to, the information that's coming in, and I process that information back out. When I regurgitate that story, when I share it again with someone else, what are they getting from me? Are they going to walk away and go, oh my gosh, I'll never take risks, or that was scary, but man, was it exhilarating.
Yeah.
So I think it's what we make of that. So absolutely, I think this generation has been so flooded with bad news that they've taken the joy away from the what if. But what if I fall? But what if you fly?
Yeah.
What if you soar? What if you see things you've never seen?
I
You'll
love
never
that. It's
know
so
until you
true.
climb the top of them. So climb the
Just
mountain.
go.
Take the first aid kit, but climb the mountain.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it goes back to personality. For me, it's the adventure. Like, I love road trips. It's not so much the final destination. It's all the little shops and the things that we find between point A and point B. That's how I'm wired to see the world. I'm hardwired to find the fun in everything, in the most mundane. I remember probably about maybe last year, I think it was in the fall, I was leaving one of our buildings on our campus, and I saw something moving on the concrete, and I got down and it was a snail. I haven't seen a snail. I don't even know the last time that I've seen a snail. And I pulled my phone out, and I probably spent 5 or 6 minutes on the ground in portrait mode on my phone with the snail.
That's
because I
amazing.
thought,
Yeah.
how long have you been out here? You haven't even been stepped on. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you're still slimy. And I was like completely blown away by the snail.
Where have you been? Where'd you? Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, man, if we could just stop long enough to enjoy those moments, I don't even know where I was going. I can't even tell you what I did that day, but I remember a snail stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, I'm capturing a picture of this thing, because when's the next time that I'm going to see a snail
Yeah.
doing their daily
Daily walk,
daily
strutting on
walk.
down.
And I was like, man, I
Yeah.
could have stepped on it, but I happened to see it. So I think, to me, the how do we offset anxiety is slow it down, because anxiety is, the body has received a rush of information. Take a breath, just really in that moment, oxygenate your brain and calm yourself down, and really kind of talk this through. How dangerous is what I'm perceiving to be danger? How dangerous
That's
is
so
really the
true.
situation? Just slow
Yeah.
down. Just slow down enough to just be able to make sense of what's happening in that moment.
Well, I love that you just said that, because it's a perfect way to just wrap this conversation up. And I can't thank you enough for your wisdom. And I feel like what I've gleaned, there's so much I've gleaned, but one, slow it down. Two, identify where it comes from. Just get into your rational headspace and know that it's going to be okay,
Right.
which I close each episode with a pearl of wisdom. And so it's so apropos that Joby made that statement, because I think about my children's grandfather, Big Daddy, we called him, H. Dawson French. And he would say, break it down. And that sounds so simple, but it's really true. Just break it down, because if you do just take a minute, slow down, take a breath, assess the situation that's causing you, whether it's a temporary situational panic or you're looking so far ahead that you can't enjoy today because of that anxiousness, just to take those moments and break it down, I think is so important. And also just remembering the Lord is in all of it. And there's so many scriptures about trusting the Lord and not being anxious. He tells us so many times in scriptures, do not fear, do not be anxious. He's telling us not to. So he's telling us he's there for us to depend on and rely on. And one scripture I wrote down was Jeremiah, I want to say it correctly, 17:7. I'm going to read it to you. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. So just having your trust and confidence in God in all your circumstances is what he's asked us to do. So I just encourage you to do that today. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Pinpoint.